Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for November 17th through 23rd. This week I read 1 book, I watched 4 shows, I watched 2 movies, and I listened to 2 audiobooks. Can I just say that this has been a hell of a week? I started the week still in Seattle, had to travel home, picked up a cold somewhere along the way, so I've been just feeding myself cold and flu medication all week, and also yesterday I fell down the stairs while trying to go do laundry, which is why I have beautiful bruises all over my body. So I'm in a wee bit of pain, but here we are. The only physical book I completed this week was Tunnel of Bones. This is the second in the Casty Blake series, at least I think that's the series name. The first one was the one that was in Edinburgh. What was it called? I can't remember. City of Ghosts. City of Ghosts was the first one. I mostly picked up this series because the first book was set in Edinburgh, which is my favorite city in the world. This book is set in Paris. This series follows a girl who's about 11 years old. Her best friend is a ghost. Her parents are ghost hunters, and they're actually the personalities on this TV show that's like a Ghost Hunters TV show, but they think that her best friend is like an imaginary friend and not a ghost that she picked up when she almost died about a year ago. So basically they're going to different haunted cities and haunted places in the world and doing like documentary style format TV show about them, and the second one takes place in Paris, so of course they're going to the catacombs because, yeah, hella haunted. This is a middle grade series, so obviously it's fairly easy reading for an adult audience. I also just really enjoy it because the characters are dynamic and complex, and their relationships are what's really interesting, and then getting to figure out what ghosty powers happen and how to fix ghosty things. And there was some interesting stuff with the language barrier because obviously they're in France and the ghost that is bothering them wouldn't speak English because why would he? This is a cute, spooky little series, and I'm interested to see where it goes from here. On to the TV shows I watched this week. I watched a few more episodes of the first season of Queer Eye. This is a rewatch for me, but it was just something to throw on while we were in Seattle and had Netflix available, and just something to unwind with because after being at a con all day, I was tired. I was probably starting to get sick at that point, let's be honest. This is obviously a comfort watch for me, and it's just fun to go back and see how much these people have changed throughout the series. For example, in the first season they were dressing Bobby in a lot of reds, which is just not something that goes with his complexion. So there was that. It's definitely not something I noticed at the time, but since I've seen more of the series and because I've read some of their books, it's something I noticed upon rewatch. I also watched the 8th episode of the 39th season of Survivor, which is the one that is currently on TV. This was a 2-parter. It was the merge episode, and there were some problems. There were problems to the point where my roommate, who is one of the biggest Survivor fans you will ever meet, refuses to continue watching the series. In the very first episode of this season, on about day 2, some complaints were brought up about this one guy who is just very, very touchy, and people didn't like being touched by him. Flash forward to now, and a lot of the girls are talking about how they don't like being touched by him, and production basically did nothing about it. To be clear, they had this meeting and they kind of gave an official warning, but apparently it was done in such a wishy-washy way that the person that was doing the touching had no idea the meeting was about him. The people he's been touching have either told him to stop or been so uncomfortable that they couldn't really say anything, and yet nobody's done anything about this. Production has done very little about this. And yeah, it's a very gross circumstance. Because we can't seem to watch this series of Survivor together, we are now watching Australian Survivor, which my roommate has already seen before but absolutely loves. I've never seen it before. We watched the first 3 episodes of the first official season of Survivor because there was an earlier season that basically everybody's like, no, it had the name of Survivor, but it was bad, and no, it does not exist. What's interesting about this inception of Survivor is they start out with 24 people instead of like 16 to 20 people, and they're there for 55 days, which is much longer than the 39 days on US Survivor. This means they start out with 3 tribes instead of 2. There's a lot more dynamics to try to understand. There's a lot more people to try to remember who they are. And so far, I'm very much enjoying the season. Finally, this week I got back to rewatching something that we hadn't actually seen since May, and that was a couple of episodes of The West Wing. I've been watching this with a friend of mine, and we've both just gotten super busy since May, apparently, and every time we tried to schedule, we had scheduling conflicts, and we finally got together and watched a couple more episodes. We are into the second season, and we watched 2 episodes that had to do with the introduction of Ainsley Hayes, who is a character that I went, oh, I know her from one of the CSIs, and yes, Emily Proctor is on CSI Miami, I believe it is. There were a lot of things in these 2 episodes that just made us remember how much we love these characters and just their growth and their personalities, and it was just honestly fun to reconnect with my friend and be able to watch this series again. On to the movies I watched this week, the first one being The Shining, the Kubrick version. I remembered having seen this before when I was in my teens, and we figured that we should rewatch it because the Dr. Sleep movie is out and I really want to go see that, but it's been a long time since I've read and watched The Shining. About halfway through this movie, I realized that the first time I watched it, I definitely got bored and turned it off halfway through, and then thought to myself after going to do other things that maybe I should go back and see at least the iconic scene of Here's Johnny. So I turned it back on. It was on television. It wasn't me watching it on a DVD or a VHS or anything like that because I'm old. And I had missed that iconic moment, but I did get to see the ending, I think, when I watched it. But yes, I read the book first, I watched the movie, I got bored. It is very, very slow paced. To the point where when I watched it this time, the person I was watching it with slept through most of it, even though every once in a while there's a bunch of screaming and he might wake up and then go immediately back to sleep when the screaming happened. Speaking of movies that have to do with screaming, we also watched Zombieland because Zombieland 2 came out this year, so we're eventually apparently going to watch that. I remembered having maybe watched this at like 2 o'clock in the morning, so I fell asleep. And I definitely slept through the entire thing the first time I watched it because I remembered absolutely nothing about this movie. As you might guess from the title, this is a zombie-based movie. There's this one character that thinks he might be the only real person that's still alive, and then he meets up with another person, and it goes from there. Obviously, the coolest thing about the cinematography of this is every time he talks about the rules he's come up with for staying alive, they appear on the screen and the text does some interesting things, and I'm very interested to see if they're going to carry that into the new film. On to the 2 audiobooks I finished this week, the first one being The Minor Third, which is the 3rd book in the Magic Misfit series by Neil Patrick Harris. What I really like about this series is each book so far has focused on a different person from the Magic Misfits. It's a group of 6 kids who basically all get together to do magic. And this one was focusing on Theo, the character that always wears a tuxedo, plays the violin, but also can levitate things, which is very cool. Obviously, being the 3rd in the series, I can't really tell you too much about the plot that happens in this one, but if you're familiar with the series, it's basically these 6 friends that got together in the first book, and these people from the past of the town they live in are coming back and they're doing something nefarious, and they don't really have all the puzzle pieces to figure out what that's going to be, but they keep trying to thwart what's happening. This book has to do with this person that comes into town who's a ventriloquist, and all of these dummies start appearing around town, and weird things happen, and it's pretty fun. As you might also guess from The Minor Third, this one gets pretty sad and a little bit dark and a little bit downtrodden when it comes to the friend group and whether or not they're going to stay together. So that was really interesting, especially to see in a middle grade book. I cannot wait to see where this series goes from here. The other audiobook I finished this week was Two Can Keep a Secret by Karen M. McManus. This is a book that, just by looking at it, I knew that it had to be Karen M. McManus because I've read One of Us is Lying, and the covers are very much the same. This book is about a couple of twins, Ellery and Ezra, who have to move to this very small town where their mother came from because her mother is now in rehab and they have to live with their grandmother, who they've never really met before. When her mother lived in the town, her twin sister went missing, so she is very touchy about this town. She doesn't like to talk about it. She really doesn't like to go back there, which is in part why the twins have never been there before. About 5 years previous to this plot, there was another tragedy that happened there where a girl was murdered. When that girl was murdered, everyone thought that her boyfriend did it, but that was never confirmed. He was never charged. And the second point of view in this book is actually his younger brother, who is the same age as Ellery. Right from the get-go, when the twins arrive in town, something terrible has happened, and then other terrible things keep happening, and it's definitely this giant mystery to figure out what's going on in this town. I really liked this as a mystery. There were a couple of things that I saw coming and I just had to wait for the characters to catch up to what I had already figured out, but there were definitely some twists that I didn't see coming, and that's always really nice from a book like this. There were a lot of moving pieces, and what I really enjoyed is even though there were a lot of characters, they were given enough personality that they were distinct and interesting to see how they interacted with each other. This is a dual perspective between Ellery, one of the twins, and Malcolm, the younger brother of the person who they thought might have killed the girl 5 years previous. Outside of being a murder mystery and mystery of what's going on in this town, this is also a lot to do with family and friends and trusting people, and it's very good. I very much enjoyed it. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!